Good morning. How is everybody today? I asked this question last night, and no one had done anything yet except for me. How many of you have had a Christmas yet of some kind? A few? That's good. Last night, nobody had except for me, so glad some of you have been able to do that. We want to welcome you this morning to Crosspoint Community Church. We're glad you're here. Our mission here is to lead people to be passionate followers of Christ. That's why we're here. That's why we do what we do. And we're really glad you've joined us this morning. If you're a first-time guest, we'd like to invite you back to the welcome table after the service is over to receive a free gift. We're just really, really glad you're here this morning. Hope you enjoy it. If you would, we're going to play another song. And if you would, before we play that song, as we're kind of getting ready, turn to somebody around you and tell them your least favorite Christmas food that your family makes every single year.
Guys, fantastic. Hey, message in just a second. If I have not met you before, my pastor here at Crosspoint, and tonight we're going to talk about waiting on Christmas. So this is what I'm moving stuff around. While I fix, I need you to tell them the story of time that you felt like Christmas just wouldn't get here, whether you were waiting on a person or a gift. So tell them that story. Yeah. You done? You guys are quick storytellers. Hold on. Okay, I'll tell you mine. The time that Christmas just felt like it would never get here for me, I was about 10 years old, and it was the year that the Nintendo 64 came out. Now, I don't know if you will properly be able to feel what I felt then, but the Nintendo 64 coming out might have been the greatest moment of my childhood. And I had sisters who were born, and I'm serious, that was on a lesser scale than the Nintendo 64 coming out. And to me, the big reason why is because as a kid, I think kids today grasp this because there's a new phone coming out, from now to now. A new phone just came out in that period of time. But I didn't understand the fact that technology got better. So I had a Nintendo, and I had a Sega Genesis, and I thought that was as good as it got. I thought this was it. We were at the pinnacle of humanity right here. And then they tell me that the Nintendo 64 is coming out. And I just remember as a kid sitting there and watching the graphics and being like, it looks so lifelike. It's so real. And I play football games. I don't know if I'm watching a game or playing a game. It's that real to me. And now we go back and it's like, oh, it's so bad. But for me, this was huge. So this is what I did. I took all the money I had, every dime, money I had from chores, from allowance, from Christmas, from birthdays. I was very good at savings. I had a savings account, and I took every last cent of it. I took a little bit of a loan from my parents, which is how they taught me back how you have to pay back at interest. Taught me that lesson very early on, which was not fun. And so I took every last penny that I had, and I bought the Nintendo 64 game system. $150. I didn't have a penny left. I had actually sold some stuff. I didn't have anything left to sell, but I had the video game system, bought it 3 weeks before Christmas. But there was a problem with that, and that was the Nintendo 64 did not come with any games. And so, for 3 weeks, I sat on my couch, and I looked at the pictures on the back of the box, and I would rub my hand over them, imagining what it would be like to play as Donkey Kong on Moo Moo Farm one day. This is the epitome of idolatry right here. When you're not using the stuff, but you're staring, drool is falling out of my lips, because I'm that excited about it. And so for 3 weeks, I sat and I just watched and I looked at it and I waited for it. But that's not even the bad part, having to wait for 3 weeks to actually get it, is that your Christmas fell on a Sunday. And in my family, there was one way you were getting out of church, and that was if you were puking. There were no other reasons why Jesus was okay excusing you from church. I mean, you could have a cough, you could have a fever, you could have pneumonia. God did not honor these as legitimate reasons to miss church. There had to be vomit coming out of your mouth for it to be okay for you to stay at home. And so I begged and I pleaded with my parents. I was like, please, just one game. Just let me open up one game. Even for 5 minutes. Just for 5 minutes before we leave for church. This is what God would want me to do on his birthday. Jesus would want this. But let's just say they were less convinced of his will than I was. And so we went to church and I endured a full service of Jesus is the reason for the season or things like that. I was just thinking about the video games. It felt like Christmas would take forever to get there that year. And it's interesting now that, I'll put this in quotes, now that I'm an adult. By age, I think most people count me as an adult, but I'll put it in the air quotes just for you. We understand where we are. But now that I'm an adult, it feels like Christmas is even harder. It's like more anticipation. Because for our kids, our 2-year-old and our 7-month-old, like, I know how awesome it's going to be. Like, we've been putting stuff together, getting things ready. And so I'm pumped up for what's going to happen. I'm excited for them. And so it feels even more so like Christmas is just never going to get here. And it's funny to me that whether you're a kid, whether you're a teen, whether you're an adult, waiting is just one of the worst things in the world. I mean, we absolutely hate to wait. Waiting just feels miserable. And we're told to wait for all different things. We're told to wait in traffic. We're told to wait our turn to speak. We're told to wait in line. We're told to wait until we're ready. And it's just kind of like we're constantly told to wait, and it just feels like we're not doing anything. It just feels like we're stuck. It feels like we're wasting time. And it's funny because our life is actually a timeline of waiting. If you trace it back, you waited to get your driver's license. And then you waited to go to college. And then you waited to find the person who you were going to marry. And you waited to have kids. And then you waited for your kids to get out of diapers. And then your kids to get their driver's license. And then their kids to go to college. And it feels like we're just kind of going through this process of waiting for each new thing. I love it what the author Shanti Feldham writes about waiting. This is what she says. I think this is fantastic. She says, I have always essentially been waiting. Waiting to become something else. Waiting to be that person I always thought I was on the verge of becoming. Waiting for that life I thought I would have. In my head, I was always one step away. In high school, I was biding my time until I could become the college version of myself, the one my mind could see so clearly. In college, the post-college adult person was always looming in front of me, smarter, stronger, more organized. Then the married person, then the person I become when we have kids. For 20 years, literally, I have waited to become the thin version of myself because that's when life will really begin. And through all that waiting, here I am. My life is passing day by day, and I'm waiting for it to start. I'm waiting for that time, that person, that event when my life will finally begin. And I love how she describes that there at the end, because I think that's when waiting is the hardest. But when we're not just waiting on something in general, but we're waiting on something specific. And that specific thing is when we believe life will really start. When we're waiting on that next phase, or that event to come, or the relationship to come into our life, or maybe the person in our life to change. And it's kind of, we're waiting in anticipation thinking, once this happens, then my life will really go. Then my life will really get going. But I've got to wait for this to come in place. And it's really important this morning that we feel this tension of waiting, because Christmas fundamentally is a story about waiting. Here's the thing. We often don't think that, because how we tell it, how we tell the facts, is very rushed. And all the facts are right, but we bunch them all together so it doesn't feel like a story of waiting. And these are the facts that we tell. We tell the story that the prophet said that there would be a virgin who would be with child, and her baby would be the Savior of the world. And so later on, an angel came to the person of Mary and said, you're going to be the mother of Jesus, and you're going to name him Emmanuel, which means God with us. And so Mary became pregnant. And Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem, and there was no room for them at the inn. And so they went to a stable, and Mary had the baby and laid him in a manger, and shepherds came and worshipped him. And that's how we tell the story. And it's, bam, there it is. But the fact is that if we tell it in its proper context, Christmas is a story of waiting. You see, years and years ago, God spoke through the prophet Isaiah. And through the prophet Isaiah, he made this prophecy. It said this: the virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel. And so he makes that prediction. And then 700 years pass. Feels a lot longer than when we tell the story like that. 700 years pass. And the people waited. They were in that time that we often find ourselves, between the time when a promise is made and a promise is fulfilled. Between the time whenever a plan is kind of put down on paper and the plan actually comes to completion. Between the time when a dream is birthed in you and that dream actually comes to fulfillment. They're waiting in that in-between period that we often find ourselves where they're just kind of stuck. They don't feel like anything is happening. They don't feel like they're accomplishing anything. They're just kind of hanging back, waiting for that next thing to come to be. And it's really clear, if you read the Old Testament, that they were not waiting for God, but they were waiting on God. Now, there is a big difference between waiting for someone and waiting on someone. I'm going to explain it in terms of relationships. If you are waiting for your significant other, let's say to be ready for the evening. If you're waiting for your significant other to get ready, that means you are waiting for them because when they are ready, that's when your evening really begins. Because once they're there, then it's like your night starts. If you're waiting on someone, men, don't nod your heads, okay? Just giving you that warning. If you're waiting on someone, that means you're waiting on them to be ready because it would be socially unacceptable for you to leave without them. You see, there's a big difference between these two. Because in one sense, you're waiting for someone because you value the person. In the other sense, you're valuing what the person could bring. I could say it like this. In one sense, you're valuing the relationship. In the other sense, you're valuing what they can do for you, their gifts or their blessings or the things that come with them. See, you've experienced this, right? You've had people who the only time they come and talk to you is when they want something from you. You've had people that the only time they brush up beside you or call you on the phone is when they need something. Feels good, doesn't it? I mean, we love that, don't we? The only time I hear from them or see them somewhere and they start walking towards me and you kind of go, oh, here it is. I know they need something. They're going to make small talk for just like 5 seconds, and I don't even want to hear that because I know they're just going to eventually ask me something, and I wish they'd just rush to that. It feels great. And that's where the people are with God. They don't value the relationship. They don't value God. They're only valuing what God can bring and what God can do. We get another great example of this at this time of the year with the gifts that we buy. My guess is that you've spent time, spent money, buying gifts for people. And the gift is the sign that you value that person. Now, to clear it up real quick so that no one's in trouble, like you're not saying to that person, I love you, a coffee maker, like that amount. So that's not what you're saying. It's just a sign, hey, I'm giving you this gift because I want you to show that I care, I value you. You see, there's something very, very wrong when we buy gifts for people because we feel like we have to. And there's something very wrong with our hearts if we're desiring a gift from someone who we don't care about. There's something very wrong with our hearts if we want gifts from people who we don't actually value. And that's where the people are. There's something really, really wrong with their hearts. Because they want God's blessings, they want God's gifts, but they don't want presence. They don't want relationship. And so it's in this environment, in this period of waiting, that God sends his prophet Malachi. And the prophet Malachi gives this word to the people. He says that God is weary of them. God is weary of them. Their desire just for his stuff, just for his blessings, has made God tired. And then he makes this statement. God says through the prophet Malachi, if you return to me, then I'll return to you. If you return to me, not my stuff, not what I can bring, then I'll return to you. God grows tired. And then he goes silent for 400 years. Now this is huge. Because the nation of Israel at this point in time They were used to a word from God. They were used to signs from God. They were used to miracles. And God goes dead silent for 400 years. And the people waited. And we notice that it's in their waiting that the people begin to change. Now, not all of them, but groups of them begin to change over time. As stories are passed on from parent to child and child to their kid, the hearts of the people begin to change. And they begin to desire God simply for who he is and not what he can do. I think this is captured really, really well in one of my favorite Christmas carols that we sing at this time of year. The title of the carol is Come, O Come, Emmanuel. And this is a song for those of you who are like, you do the caroling thing, like you go knock on doors. That's not me, because I don't sing. I mean, I go up and knock on the door and preach to people, but that's not usually very well received, so I'll leave the caroling to other people. But this is one of my favorite carols that people sing at this time of year. And it's not a song that can just be sung lightly. Like, it's not a la-la sing-songy song. Like, it is a song that there's desire within you. There's something that you yearn for. And there's this one line that's repeated in every phrase, and it says this: Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. It's saying rejoice, because God's coming. Rejoice, because God's here. And it's not talking about his stuff. It's not talking about what he can do. It's saying he's here. So there should be a celebration. And that's what we see in the people. We see their hearts begin to change and shifting off of what God can bring to valuing God for who he is. And we see the shift caught up in the person of Mary. And what happens is an angel comes to Mary. An angel comes to Mary. And the angel says something very, very profound. It says, hey, I know you're a virgin. I know you're not married, but you're going to be with child. But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, because your son will be the Savior of the world. He will set the people free from their sins. And I want to show you Mary's response in 1 second. But as I show you Mary's response, I want you to ask one simple question. Was she valuing God for what he could bring, or valuing God for simply who he was? This is what she says. Angel comes and says that, and she says, I am the Lord's servant. May it be to me as you have said. I am the Lord's servant. May it be to me as you have said. The angel comes and says, hey, I know this isn't your plans. I know this isn't how you dreamed things we could be. I know this isn't how you mapped your life out. But this is what's going to happen. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. People are going to spread rumors about you. And she goes, okay, that's fine. And what we see in that is that while the people were waiting, God was working. While the people were waiting and hanging back, waiting for that promise to be fulfilled, God was at work. God was doing things. And he was shifting their hearts and moving their desires and turning their focus back to him. While the people are sitting around checking their clock, God was rolling up his sleeves because he had work to do. And he said, I want to shift your focus from what I can bring, from my blessings, to myself. And what we see is something very important. The people weren't waiting on God. God was waiting on them. The people were not waiting on God. God was waiting on them. He was waiting for them to shift from waiting on to waiting for. He was waiting for them to turn their focus on him. And the people are sitting around going, I wonder when God's going to show up. And God's working on their hearts and going, I want you to desire me. I've often heard people say the phrase, I'm just waiting on God. What are you doing? I'm just waiting on God. And I want to say, no, you're not. No, you're not. Because to say that would mean that you've got everything where it needs to be, and God needs to get his ducks in a row. You're exactly who you need to be, and God needs to get his stuff together. And nothing could be further from the truth. You're not waiting on God. He's waiting on you. And he's using that time in between to turn your focus to him. And that's what Christmas is at the core. You see, the prophets had this relationship with the people. When God spoke through the prophets, it was very simple. If you obey, then I will bless. If you obey, then I will bless. And God says, I am tired of this. I am weary of this relationship. You see, it's very, very easy to desire blessings from a policy, from a law, from a rule. And God goes, I'm going to change this. And so what he does is he sends his son in flesh and blood to walk among the earth, walk among the people. And this is what Christmas is. Christmas is God leaning in, and he's pressing the question. Are you waiting on, or are you waiting for? You see, the people could put this question off. They could put it on the back burner. But when God sends his son, he's pushing the question to them. And the question is, what will you do with my son? What will you do with my son? Will you ignore him? Will you attack him? Will you try to use him? Or will you follow him? He's leaning in, he's pressing the question to us. What kind of a relationship do you want with me? Do you want simply a I obey and you get blessings? Or do you actually want a real relationship with me? And he's going, what will you do with my son? Will you ignore him? Will you attack him? Will you try to use him? Or will you follow him? And that's the question that's posed to us every day of our lives, but especially every Christmas. A couple years ago, I had the privilege, even though there was no special invitation, to witness, let's just say, humanity at its worst. You would know it as Black Friday shopping. And so we went, this is back when there was still a Circuit City. And so me and my dad, we went to Circuit City, and I was going to get a TV, because in the Circuit City catalog, they had this TV, and it was the last year that you could buy tube TVs. Like, this thing was a monster. I couldn't even, like, sometimes you can't wrap your arms around a TV because the screen is so wide. That is not this TV. It had more depth than width on this TV. But I was pumped because I wanted a TV. And so we're waiting in line at 5 a.m. at Circuit City, and I'm convinced that people are stupid. You may be as well. Not you, me, and everyone else, but not you guys. And well, this is why I'm stupid. I'm part of the stupid humanity. At Circuit City, they open up the doors, and we all run in the store like morons. And so we all run in the store, and there's so many of us who pile in the store that no one can move. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, if just half of us would have gone in, we would all be done by now. But instead, we all run in, and no one can move, and we just kind of stand around and look at each other. And so I eventually kind of make my way around. I get my TV. I'm waiting in this line of like 100 people. Everyone is standing in line like this, because if you stand with your head like this, your nose is touching the back of the person's head in front of you. And so we're all just standing like this. I mean, you don't even know whose BO belongs to who, because half the people didn't realize it was necessary at 5 a.m. when you haven't showered to put on deodorant. And so it's just awful. I'm miserable. I am as unhappy as I've ever been. And over the loudspeaker starts to play, "It's the most wonderful time of the year." And I just started to laugh. And like the people in front of me are like, he's losing his mind. Like something's wrong. And I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, this is the most wonderful time of the year. Now, I'm going to play Scrooge for a second. And those of you who love Christmas, you're not going to enjoy this. Those of you who are Scrooges yourself, this is going to be your favorite part of the Christmas season right here. But I was like, really? This is the most wonderful time of the year? Now I understand Christmas has lots of positive things outside of the story of Christmas. Like, there's time off work. There's time with family and friends. Like, these are good things. But on another note, have you attempted to get just in the Walmart parking lot over the last 3 weeks? I mean, how terrible is that? I am convinced that Tim Burton could remake his movie, The Nightmare Before Christmas. Forget all the claymation. Just take a video camera into Walmart. Week before Christmas. That's the nightmare. I mean, that's the nightmare right there. If you actually make it into the parking lot, find a spot, and make your way into the store, you find people scouring the shelves, stressed out, sweating to find gifts that they should have bought 3 weeks ago. I mean, if you actually stand in one place for more than 10 seconds, the old lady with the cart behind you will hit you because she needs to get the gift wrapping table. I mean, it's just awful. And we sing, it's the most wonderful time of the year. Now, if I say like this is a little more serious. It's no wonder why so many people get depressed this time of year. Because it's true. So many people get depressed at this time of year, and it's no wonder. Because we tell people that when we celebrate Christmas like this is as good as life gets. I mean, this is life at its pinnacle. You can go through 364 days of just nastiness, of difficult times, and it's all worth it for this one day. So we tell people this season of stress and debt is as good as it gets. And so is this as good as life gets? If you're waiting on God, if you're looking for his blessings, if you're just looking for his stuff, then yes, this is as good as life gets. Now, some of you may love Christmas, and so you go, well, that's not so bad. I'll tell you that this is, right here, this is as good as it gets if you're waiting on God. But if you're waiting for God, if you're looking for a relationship, he offers you a life that is deeper, that is fuller, that is richer, and that is eternal. Now notice I did not say easier, because that life is found over there. If you're waiting on God, this is as good as it gets. But if you're waiting for God, if you're looking for a relationship, and if you're willing to follow him, he offers you a life that is better and a life that's everlasting. If you cut away all the clutter, if you push aside all the traditions and you take all the facts and the stories and everything we know at Christmas and you boil it down to the just essential minimum, Christmas at its core is an invitation. It's an invitation to a life that's better. And when you realize that, you realize the waiting isn't so bad. Because it's in the waiting that God is working. And he's taking the messiness and the brokenness and the pieces of your dreams and plans in your heart, and he's boiling them together and using them to shift your focus and shift your heart to him. You see, while you're just waiting, God's working. And he's using all of it, and he's leaning in, and he's offering the invitation. He's asking the question, what will you do with my son? What will you do with the baby born in the manger? Will you ignore him? Will you attack him? Will you try to use him? Or will you follow him? And that's the question you've got to answer this Christmas. It's the question you've got to answer every day for the rest of your lives. What will you do with the baby born in the manger? Because he's not coming. He's already here. What will you do with him? Will you ignore him? Will you attack him? Will you use him? Or will you follow him? And I hope you answer that question once and for all this Christmas. Hey, let me pray for you real quick. Lord, we thank you for this chance that we can just gather here together. And God, I ask that our love for you, our affection for you, our desire for you would in some way, shape, or form this morning be deepened. That we would, as we go throughout the season, but Lord, more particularly as we go throughout the rest of our lives, that we would seek you, that we would search for you. And not what you can do, not what you could bring, even though those are wonderful blessings and gifts that you give us, but that we would understand the best thing that you can give us is a relationship with you. And we thank you for Christmas. We thank you for inviting us into that. And we pray this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Hey, thank you very much for joining us this morning. You are dismissed.